Yeah, so hi everyone. I won't bore you too much with who I am because it's not about me. But yeah, my name's Sophia. I work here at Pocket Gamer, Steel Media. I lead all of our big indie pitch antics and anything to do with indie developer relations, I suppose. But this is Simon. I'll let him introduce himself. So tell us about yourself and your role.
Hello, I am Simon Byron, Publishing Director at Curve. My role is covers the whole spectrum of the publishing side of Curve. So that's everything from finding new games, working with the marketing team on pre-launch stuff, working with the sales team on sales strategy and lifecycle management, and then dealing with the board. So the whole lot, really, from start to finish, and all the bits in between. Those people that are leaving, I'm actually going to show some sales figures later, so they are going to miss out. But so it's all aspects, really.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah. So I mean, like you say, to jump into things, one of the first things I wanted to touch on is, 2019's been a really strong year for Curve. But what kind of things do you think have helped played into that, not just the success now, but continuing that success and growing it and evolving the business?
We've changed a lot over last sort of 4 or 5 years. I think we started off as a typical, what you'd call an indie publisher. Games were sort of $10, $15. A lot of 2D puzzle platformers, etc., which were very much of their moment. But as the market's moved on, I think we've moved on as well. And most recently, I think we've sort of found what our strength is, concentrating on what we're good at, and making sure that whoever we're working with, we're able to sort of demonstrate that we are making a difference. So, there are plenty of brilliant digital publishers out there at the moment, and I think each of them has got their own strengths. Ours, we seem to be doing pretty well on games that are streamable at the moment. A lot of physics-based games are doing well for us at the moment. But yeah, in 2019, we had some really successful titles. We started off with When Ski Lifts Go Wrong, and we finished up with Autonauts, and lots in between. So for us, it's picking games that we're comfortable with. I had a few meetings earlier where some people were pitching brilliant games, but just weren't for us. I mean, I personally, I thought they were great, but yeah, I think identifying titles that we can make a difference with seems to be going well.
Yeah, so quickly before I go on to that, just on to the next thing, just something on that then is, would you say that, part of Curve's strength is sort of not just focusing on sort of what you know, but kind of doubling down on that, becoming an expert in that sort of field, so, as part of that, building up the brand around those sorts of experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want us to ever have a certain style of game. In the way that some other publishers do. I think you're potentially limiting who you're able to work with there. But I was a journalist many years ago, PR and marketing. In between, and since I've moved to publishing, we've sort of seen what levers tend to work, and so making sure that our titles have those, really, that we are able to certainly on the marketing side create that demand ahead of launch, and then really ride them home once they are up on store.
Yeah, so I know, obviously, like you hinted to the audience, you've got some things to share.
I do, they've shut the doors.
And I think, to make sure we fit that in, I think this is a nice time to segue into that. Is one of the things I wanted to touch on is sort of like how you try and predict success in the market, such as through, like, I know we spoke about it before, but like wish listing and sort of what lessons you guys have learned from that sort of area.
Yeah, I think we're ready for the slides now, if that's okay. There's been a lot of chat recently. I've seen 2 very long-form pieces written by individuals who've been trying to unpick what's been going on Steam, using the sort of publicly visible metrics to determine whether games are successful and how much revenue you can expect and all the rest of it. And so, as I tend to do with all of these things, I see whether what we're seeing tallies with what's being speculated upon. And as I was pulling the figures together, I thought, well, why don't I show them to the Pocket Gamer gang? So, if you got the presentation at the back, please. Hello. Thank you. Sorry. Can we start at the beginning? There we go. Can wishlist predict the future? We do a lot of work, particularly on Steam, where you measure how well your marketing is going, depending on the demand that you're seeing. Wishlists are a really valuable insight into whether you're cutting through the noise of Steam. If we move to the next slide, please. The whole point is... Can we get a clicker? A clicker. Cool. Thank you. I've got a green button and a red button. Why are you doing this? Well, there was a really interesting piece. The source is down there. One of these long-form reads that was looking at Steam and what's going on there. But the headline from this slide is that there are 30,000 games on Steam at the moment. So how do you stand out from those? I've picked 7 games that we've launched over the last 3 years. Can't name them, obviously. But I thought it'd be interesting to see sort of how the wish lists have compared with sales after the first month. So those are 7 games. Which one do you think sold the most in the first month? 5. You would say 5, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I got it wrong too.
So we measure wish lists from the moment that you put a game up on store, and wish lists, just to remind everybody, are a way for consumers to signify that they're interested. On Steam, anybody's wishlisted game will get an email at launch telling you the game's on sale, and then subsequently they'll get emailed and notified if a game on their wish list is discounted. So 7 games, lots of those done all right on wish lists. Let's have a look at the sales. So 7 games there, all telling. Well, I think there are 4 stories going on here. I'm going to move on in a second. So if you want to take your pictures now, don't put these on the internet or tell our rivals. Okay, let's look at the 4 games that, or the 4 stories I think we're seeing here. So those 4 games where we saw significant increase from wish listers to sales in the first month. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that 100% of those wish listers went on to buy the game, but as a measure of success, it is pretty interesting. These 4 games are all very streamable, and so whilst traditional PR and comms are important, we find that if you're utilising a significant streaming campaign, then you can really do pretty well on Steam. This is the second game. I just wanted to point out that one launched, did loads of units in the first week and then sort of really dropped off. I don't know why that was, but still, generally speaking, we sold more copies in the first month than we did total wishlist on that one. The other interesting ones are these 2. That one there, again, out of the whole scope of those 7 games, just over 5,000 wishlists isn't significant. And what was particularly interesting with this one was quite a while ago, was that actually fewer consumers bought the game than had signified wish list. Now, we spent a long time trying to get these 5,000 wish listers. I think retrospectively, if we'd taken a step back and thought then, why isn't this cutting through? We shouldn't have been surprised, particularly to see that the sales weren't necessarily there. And then finally, just to underscore some of the points that have been made here all day, is that your game needs to be good. This was a game that got significant wish lists, but when it launched, didn't quite get the reception that we were hoping for. So it's all very well doing pre-release awareness. You just need to back it up with the fact with a good game. These are the people that are flirting with us. So first month sales, first month's wish list, boom. So these are people that once the game is launched, then say, yeah, that's cool, but I'm not paying full price for it. I think the typical wish list conversions in the first 3 months, 10%, and after the first year are 14%. So not everybody here is going to eventually buy your game during that time. But again, it's reassuring to see that there are people that were interested enough just to hit that notify me button. This is Autonauts, and I thought I'd just very quickly tell you what we do, or what we did, to drive those wish lists. This was the first announcement trailer. Again, so in terms of the going out the gate, we think it did pretty well. That was a really, really cute video. We worked with Stefano in the front here, did our PR there, thank you. So we're pretty happy with that. I'll come to that one in a second. We did some Gamescom stuff, so we went to events, we did some demonstrations there and some interviews. This is, what you're seeing there is the bump, so when those people that saw it at Gamescom subsequently went on to write about it, we saw wishlist increase. TwitchCon we did, and then here is when a lot of sort of Steam's natural ecosystem kicks in. When you start featuring on popular and upcoming, which is judged on wish lists, if you make it there in the week before your launch, then you're going to still drive more interest. This is another title, and I wanted to just talk briefly about that spike in the middle there. So a lot of people were interested in the game then. We actually did nothing on that game at that time to generate those wish lists. It actually came as an experiment that we started doing on Steam when you could do your franchise banner highlighted there. So a lot of people just don't. So Steam, Hannah was doing some brilliant talk. I think Hannah's work is fantastic. You should really listen to what she says. But a lot of the tips are sort of working within the Steam ecosystem. It doesn't let you do much. It's not particularly flexible. The one thing you can control is that franchise banner, which a lot of people just shove their own logo up there and say, sort of check out all of our other games. What we've started doing is using launches and discounts to drive awareness on forthcoming titles. So that's Table Manners, out on Valentine's Day, is our next game, and that's being displayed on all of our other games. So we are using the traffic that we're getting to games like Human Fall Flat, Autonauts, etc., to cross-promote a forthcoming title. What was this one then? That was it. And then again, so some of these long-form pieces we're looking at what can you expect from game sales, what can you read into it from the first month? So that's how some games sold over the 12-month period. And what was that? So if you are looking for an average, it's about 30-something, but you can see there that every game is telling a different story. So often it can be quite difficult to predict the success of a game based purely on 12 months alone. So can wishlist predict the future? The answer is no.
But still, you know, like you say, some fascinating sort of lessons to be taken from that. And one of the things I wanted to touch upon is that's quite surprising. And obviously there are still like lots of lessons that can be taken from that. What other things have you found surprising in your job, like alongside wish lists that maybe people haven't thought upon? I mean, I talk a lot about lessons that indie devs can learn, and, you know, obviously we've heard from Stephen and other speakers, but is there anything you think hasn't been touched upon that has surprised you guys at Curve and yourself?
Yeah, well, this is the most difficult job I've done in the games industry in all those years. In just that actually having signs of whether something's going to launch well, it's very, very difficult to judge. I think the thing that surprised Curve over its recent period is China. You know, Human Fall Flat really didn't follow any sort of typical publishing model. We'd sold about 180,000 copies in the first 18 months. We were really happy with that. I was on paternity leave over Christmas 2017. I saw the emails flying around where people were going, what on earth is going on with Human Fall Flat? So we sold 180,000 copies in the 18 months since it launched. There was one day in December or over the Christmas period where we sold 105,000 copies. And we're like, what is happening here? We managed to unpick it. At the time, it was all down to a Chinese streamer who'd historically favoured PUBG. He decided, as a bit of levity, he was going to play Human Fall Flat, and that really set it off in China. So we have recently employed in the company a Chinese territory executive. We make sure that all of our content, branding, in-game stuff is going to be relevant to China. Because the opportunities there are enormous.
Yeah, actually, that's really interesting. I was going to touch upon that later, but we obviously at Steel Media, as you all know, we do a lot of work in China as well, and we go off to China Joy, but I'm always fascinated by how different the market is. There's like there's so many alterations and the games are different, and obviously you've got the long localization processes and everything like that. Now, obviously China's a key market, but are there any other markets that curve, like new and emerging markets that curve, or you think should be looked at and taken more interest in?
Yeah, Russia does well on PC. It's really important that, despite the fact you're publishing globally, that you are thinking locally. And so, the pricing is different in China, it's different in Russia. And managing that can be a challenge. Whilst the vast majority of your sales are going to be on Steam, there's an awful lot of extra stuff that you can do through key resellers, and that's your choice whether you're going to choose to work with them officially or unofficially. But making sure that you're keeping an eye on what your games are selling for at different parts of the world, particularly during promotions, is key. So, yeah, we generally localize into 11 languages, Korea as well. Can do well for us, and then you track how your game is doing, whether it's under or overperforming in certain territories, and there's always the option of adding localization in at a further date if something needs a bit of a lift or is doing particularly well.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've not got that long left, so I want to touch upon, moving forward. Obviously this is 2020, new decade. We've got new consoles coming out. We've got, a lot of changes in the market. But what do you think are both the biggest challenges coming up, not only for Curve, but for the industry at large? Or maybe they're the same challenges?
It's the age-old question of discoverability on stores, understanding where your games fit. Stephen was talking... Is he still here? Do I still need to compliment him? He's gone. That's rude. He was talking about the importance of that branding and actually seeing your titles in context before you launch. We print out the stores and put proposed artwork up there. So, there are some things that you can manage. So, driving traffic to your Steam page ahead of launch is something that you can do. You are in control of through working with PR, streamers, etc. Working with the platform holders to understand what they're interested in, to make sure that when your game launches, it is going to get the support. It's going to be an exciting year, isn't it? We've got some new hardware coming. So it's going to be interesting to understand the transition. It'll be very different. I think, previously there have been sort of hard stops between generations, and I think we're going to start seeing them to merge now. And so understanding that, you won't just be talking to next-gen customers, but not forgetting the existing customers as well. So,
well, that was one thing I was going to touch upon, is obviously we've got the new consoles, but as you literally just said, there's more of like a convergence at this point. It's not that one's gone and this one's here, and we've got, major console platforms saying they're going to continue supporting all platforms. I mean, where do you Curve focus on that? Is it, PC's obviously a continually evolving ecosystem, but are you looking at the consoles in terms of current generation, or is new generation now a focus much more than the one that we're about to sort of leave behind?
Yeah, so we've got one next-gen launch title, which is unannounced at the moment. Really excited about that. And then any games that we're publishing in 2021 will be on the other consoles as well. So, it's important to think about that now, obviously, to make sure that you're addressing the widest possible audience. Presents some challenges, certainly in the development, but also on the store side. But yeah, I think this generation more than any before it is going to enable, it isn't a choice of either or at the moment. You should be able to sell across all of them. So yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, and part of that I was saying is we've obviously always got Nintendo that seems to have its weird launch systems and straddle both. Lots of, especially on my side, the indie developers are seeing good success in the Switch, and obviously there is starting to become that saturation now, but is Switch still a sort of key focal point? Well, I say still, is it a focal point rather for Curve, or is it something more that you're just monitoring and taking opportunities as they arise?
No, we're huge fans of the Switch. I think the market's changed radically in the few two and a half years, well, almost 3 years that it's launched. You used to be, as with all stores, you used to be able to put sort of anything up there and it would sell. I think the attitude has changed. Consumers are absolutely overwhelmed with content. The store itself is flooded. I think somebody pointed out on Switch last year there were more games released on Switch than there were on PlayStation and Xbox combined. So it's busy. They're not all good. But I think consumers are really deciding to choose. So back in the old days, you used to be able to put a portfolio title up there and know that it would sell. I think you need to treat the Switch like you do all other titles, launch new games on it, and I think they can do very well. But what consumers are starting to push back on are sort of older games coming later to Switch.
I mean, obviously, we talked about wish listing. Do you think there's anything that can be done to aid with the discoverability problem on console platforms at the moment? Because it's a slightly different system, even though it might seem similar on the face of it. There is, a lot of differences, and a lot of indies are complaining about discoverability on consoles.
Yeah, the only real way you can influence the discoverability beyond launch is through chart position, which is why you see such aggressive discounting. Christmas was nuts, particularly on Switch. Cubic Games were giving away a game a day, which meant that they'd flooded the charts with all of their titles on Christmas Day. So that's one thing that you can do. Some stores are more dynamic than others. So I think, hopefully with the new generation, we'll start to see stores sit like Steam does, which is very, very dynamic. It's algorithmic. It's showing games to consumers they think will buy it. And hopefully we will start to see more of that. I'd love to see user scores come in on the Switch, because at the moment it's quite a blind purchase. You don't know what the reaction to games are. But yeah, sort of more interaction. I get the sense it's coming, but it's taking its time.
So just very quickly, because I know we're just at time, I did just want to touch on one last thing, is Game Pass and those sorts of newer opportunities, are they things that Curve are looking at going forward?
I love it. Yeah, we've been huge fans of Game Pass since the day that they launched. And for us, we've always seen it as extra revenue opportunity. With Human Fall Flat and Bomber Crew, both of which launched sort of day and date into Game Pass, we actually saw sales on Xbox increase through people able to try it without any commitment, and then getting more popular through word of mouth. So as a content creator, there's never been a better time, I don't think. There's so much demand for content across subscription services, streaming services, etc., that there's this huge amount of opportunity out there.
I think that's a really nice point to end on. So let's give Simon a massive round of applause. Fascinating chat. And I will pass back to our gracious host.